Okay, so I did some work up front just to help this process along a little bit. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to make three different assets to be used for an art sale at Solano College. And specifically, we're going to create a post for Instagram, a story for Instagram, and a 4x6 flyer. You can see here in Illustrator, I have these templates already set up. I've got a bleed line going around them, and the bleed line will just help. For one, I like bleed lines because, they extend past the artboard just a little bit. I have this set up as 11 pixels, which is kind of the default for print work. Um, when we send information to the printer and it's a full bleed, meaning the printing is going to go to the edge of the paper, we want to make sure we're extending past that page just as a margin of error. So when the printer cuts, they're cutting inside of that printed area just a little bit, and that ensures like a nice clean cut with no white space being cut. And I have this set up as well for the digital files. And I know that when I've created posts before, and I try to just align to the artboard, it is something that, every once in a while I'll get like a little white edge, or the design doesn't go all the way to the edge. So setting up these bleed lines before we export our files just kind of ensures that we won't run into any of those little whoopsies. So what I did to help us out is I went to Unsplash. I found a couple of photos that I wanted to use, and I took them into Photoshop. I cut out the background, I made some adjustments, and I turned them into assets that we can use. And I did that under libraries. So I created a library just for this event. So I have it here, SCC Art Sale. And inside, I have plugged in a couple of files that we can use. We can use these files regardless of what Adobe program that we're in. So we've got a background image. We've got two Solano College logos, one in color, one in white. And then we have another photograph digital asset, which I'll talk about when we start using it, what I did. I also have these raw files as downloadables in a Google Doc. So I've got the template for you in Illustrator. I've got the original files from Unsplash. I did a video tutorial on how to create the library and showing you how I made those assets in the library. So now we're ready to put everything together. What I want to do is we are going to go into our libraries and we're going to take this background. When we pull something out of a library, we just click and drag, and then it'll want us to like place it. And you can see I made it nice and big. And, we're going to have to resize this to all of our artboards, but I kind of want to have some cohesion between everything. When we're designing, especially multiple applications, marketing material should have some level of cohesion between everything. Thank you. So having the same assets, having a similar layout, I think is important. So then when somebody views this online and then they see the flyer, they're going to recognize all of those things as being, the same event. And then it's going to just connect a little bit better. Once we land this, you can see I've got a bounding or blue X going through this, the center of it. That means it's a linked file. And if we don't embed this before we either share it to our printer or we send it to somebody else to print, we're going to lose that. So I'm just going to collapse my libraries really quickly, open my properties, scroll down, and you'll see quick action under embed. I'm going to click on that, will flatten the layers to a single image, and then it flattens it, and now it'll live here forever. So let's go ahead and shrink it down. I'm going to zoom out here. I'll take and just holding. I've gone on PC, so I'm going Shift Alt. If you are on a Mac, you're going to go Shift Option. And then I'm holding Shift to drag it down into the width. And you can see that I'm using my bleed space. I'll zoom in and kind of just line it right on up. I'll leave this extending past for just a second. I'll show you how to crop these here momentarily. So I'm going to now copy this. I'm holding Alt, clicking on my image, and then dragging it over. So it's in a similar spot, but you can see we've got a bunch of open space now. I'll zoom in, make sure it's lined up to the top there, the bleed space. And now I'm going to extend this, hold Shift and drag so it goes all the way to the bottom there, the bottom bleed line. All right, so now let's make some adjustments here. I'm going to click on our post, and I'm going to scroll over into our properties panel and then go to crop image. When we do that, we get this little bar or little window here telling us that we can crop our design. And I'm going to zoom in, making sure I'm on the bleed line. Looks good. Looks good. And then I'll just hit enter. So now that clips everything to exactly where we want it. We're going to do the same thing on this one. So we'll click on the story design, click on crop image. We'll get everything dialed in. And then zoom in just a little bit. Take this crop line right there. Hit enter. And the last one, we'll take this and copy it. Go over to our 4x6 post. Actually, yeah, I think that works. And we're cropping the image once again. Move that box. We could also, if you look over here, I've got this set to pixels. That's web friendly. And then what I have here on the 4x6 flyer is 1200 by 1800 pixels. And that is the kind of default for a 4x6 when you scale it. So I could dial those dimensions in here if I really wanted to be specific, but being that we have this little bleed space, I didn't do the math. I think we'll just zoom in and make sure it's on the line and then hit enter. So that looks great. Let's take all these. We're going to select all of them and then Control 2 or Command 2 on the Macs to lock them into place. And now we're ready to put stuff on them. Okay. We do have primary information. It's an art show, so Solano College is hosting it. Solano College Art Show, that's going to be our primary information. And then we have secondary information, which is the date, location, time. Yeah, date, location, time. And then we have a call to action. And we're talking about marketing, and we're trying to bring people in. A call to action is key. If we don't tell our potential customers what to do, they're less likely to just do it. So we have those three elements, and then people usually make decisions based on emotion. So we're going to have like an emotional kind of piece in there as well. So the first thing you want to do is you want to, let's go to my spot here so I know where I'm going. And Yes, we did. Yes, we did. Okay. I love it. What we're going to do first is we're going to create in our properties. We'll open up our properties. We'll get our eyedropper tool. And we want to pick out some colors in here that we want to use in our design. And I chose this background, orange, yellow, blues, greens, and teals. It's kind of like a tertiary kind of a, it's artistic, it's painted, but it's also tertiary colors, so they work well together. And so we're going to use some of those tertiary colors inside of our design. So let's kind of just zoom in. We'll start with the Instagram post. We're using our eyedropper tool. We can click around, and wherever we click, it's picking up information, pixel information. I can really zoom in, and I could grab a specific pixel of color if I wanted to. We don't need to be that specific, but I'm clicking. I like that dark red, and we're going to turn that into a swatch. So if I get into my properties panel, go to my fill color, we'll hit the little plus sign. Let's name this dark red. We'll leave it process color. That's okay. Even the printer is going to use process colors to print, so we don't need to create custom swatches and make them spot color and all that. We're going to make it red. We're going to make one yellow, so we'll get back to our eyedropper tool. We'll click on a yellow. I like that one. That's the main part of this design. Hit the plus sign. We'll call it yellow. Golden yellow. How about golden yellow? Okay. You can see these swatches are now getting populated right here. And then I want to zoom out. I want to get one of these darker bluish teal colors, but yeah, that one looks great. So I'm going to add that one, and we'll say dark teal. And then, okay. We'll also be using white, but we already have white, so we don't need to make it. And so now we've got some colors that we can use over and over. And if you're following along with me, of course, you can use your own colors. I want to give you some of your own choices here. Now we're ready to start typing. So get on your type tool. We'll just single click on the page. We're going to be using two fonts. I want to use the serif font, kind of for the secondary information, and then we'll use a sans serif font, big and bold. So we are going to type out Solano College. Let's make it all caps. And I am going to use Adorn's Serif. I'm going to increase the size just so we can see what it's looking like. We're going to place it on the top edge of our artboard. And we're going to add color to it. But I want to use our appearance panel just to kind of make it a little easier. We can repeat this action to other text as well. And I love using the appearance panel. So I have it over here under appearance. If you don't have it, you can go to window to appearance. And we'll select our font, and then we'll add a new fill. Default, it always defaults to black, but the swatches that we set up, we have access to those. So I'm going to click on dark red, and we're going to give it a stroke color. So I'm going to click on the stroke, and we're going to click white. We're going to increase the stroke weight just a little bit. And the one reason I really love the appearance panel is it's set up like layers. So we can move these layers around. We can add more layers to it, and we have a lot of flexibility. So I'm just going to take this layer, drag it right on up over. So fill goes first, stroke goes second. And you can see now if I zoom in that the stroke is sitting behind the fill. I've got a stroke weight of 6. I'm going to drop it down just by 1. But then I want to let's click on character, and then we're going to add an effect. And this effect's going to be a drop shadow. So when we set this up, it kind of defaults to multiply, opacity to 75, and then it's got some offset. I also like doing this in pixels versus inches because, when we use the offset, it offsets it by pixel. So it steps very, very nicely. I'm going to change the blur to 0. I'm going to change the opacity to 100. And then I'm just going to adjust the offset a little bit too. So it's not so drastic, but it's there. And then the color, this is where we kind of, I would like Adobe to make this change. So if I go to color swatches, it's got swatches in here, but it doesn't, just kidding, it does. We can find the swatches that we've created. We'll hit OK. We'll change mode from multiply to normal, and then you can see what happened. I'm going to drop these offset down just a little bit more, so it's just peeking out there, and then I'll hit OK. So when we zoom out, now we can see it pretty well. The other cool thing about this is if I type anything now, we have that same effect on our text, which is awesome. Okay, so we have this set up. What I'm going to do is I want to add just a bar of color going across, and it's going to define the space a little bit so we can put our art sale on there, and it's going to really jump off the page. So I'm going to grab my rectangle tool. Just going to click and drag, and I want a level of dimension happening, so I'm going to make the bar go across, but not all the way across the letters. You can kind of see what I'm going to do here in a second. Okay. My properties, we're going to change this burgundy, and I want to use that teal color. And then I'll just collapse this so we can kind of see what we're doing. I want to move it so it's going behind. So I'm going to use my brackets. So Control on the PC, Command on the Mac, and then I'm using the left bracket to move it back, arrange it back in space. And that's now looking the way I want it to look. I'm going to move this down. And, the cool thing is everything is adjustable. We can kind of finesse as we go along. And I don't have anything locked. So we can, let's see here, we'll add another bar of text. We'll click on the page, and this is going to say art sale. Again, all caps. I'm going art, hitting enter, and then typing sale. We'll scale it up, holding shift so it constrains proportions. And instead of using another sans serif font, I am going to use a font called Apparat Black. Nice, big, heavy, bold font. You can see that there's a big space, so I'm going to adjust the leading on here too. So in my character window, if you don't see your character window, you can always go to Window. You have to go all the way down to Type, and then you can find your character window. Good rule of thumb, if you can't find it, go to your Window tab. I'm going to adjust the leading, just tighten it up a little bit so there's not as much space. Again, I'm looking for dimension, so I'm going to move it so it's both on the teal background and hanging off. I want this to jump off the page as well, so I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger, and then make it go into our appearances again. I love being in here. And then we'll change this to white. We don't want a background in here, but if you click on character, go to effects, go to stylize, go to drop shadow, it remembers what we did. And I want to have that be the teal color. So we'll go ahead and go to our color swatches, find the dark teal, hit OK. And then we're going to make the step, the offset, a little bit more drastic. That's good. If after we start designing, we think we need to make some changes, we always go back to our appearance panel, click on it. We have options. We can change things in here pretty easily. So we've got a lot of flexibility. Okay, so now when we scale back, it's looking pretty good. That is jumping off the page very nicely. All right, so now we've got our secondary information. And so with that, I'm going to grab our rectangle tool. I'm just going to click over here on the right side, click and drag. We'll make it white because we want our attention to go to it. When we read something, it's down and to the left. So, this is kind of a natural, our eye naturally moves in that direction. Again, we can adjust this here in a little bit. Maybe we have it overlapping. We'll see what we feel like. Okay, so now I want to add a little bit of artistic flair to this rectangle. And I'm going to go into the width tool, but inside the width tool, we've got all these other options, one being the wrinkle tool. We have a default kind of setting here. If we need to make changes to how that wrinkle tool affects, so if I just click and drag it across, you can see that it's making some not crazy changes. I can go there and kind of, just sit and hold and drag and make more changes. But if we want more drastic or less drastic changes, we can always double click into that tool and we can make our changes in here. Size, angle, intensity, how much detail it does. So again, every tool you have lots of options, but I think that looks pretty good. We don't need it to be super crazy. It's subtle, but it's artistic, and I like it. Okay, from here, we need to grab our information. So let's go ahead and get into my doc here. So it's all ready. Again, this doc is shared with you. And it is my interview prompt. And we have the primary information, which is already up, and then secondary information here. So let's click and drag that. We'll copy it. The good thing about this is the spelling. It's coming straight from our customer, so the spelling should be correct. We'll go back in. We'll click on our text tool. We'll make a text box, and then we'll paste it all in. Okay, so we've copied it, we've pasted it. Now we need to resize it. So we'll take this, we'll go into our properties. We will change it back to the adorns serif, and then we'll increase the stroke weight. I'm just clicking on my mouse and then using my mouse wheel to get approximate size. Let's see here, 30 points. Fit inside of this area. The good thing about a text box too is you can make some adjustments to it, and it will fit the size of your area. All right, that looks good. So we're gonna again adjust the leading so it's not so much, so tight. And we have some areas that we need to be adjusted, but that's okay. Let's take, actually, we're going to take this down, all the way down. That's a good space between each line, I think. what I do want to do is get my type tool and Solano. We'll just make those. We can make some adjustments to specific lines of text. So I'm just spacing this out so it's kind of easier to read. We're defining all of the information in a digestible way. So maybe Saturday needs to go up a little bit in point size. So that's 33 points. Let's see what 33 points looks here. Let's see what that looks at 33. And then we'll tighten up the space on this one just a little bit. Yeah, not looking too bad. If we wanted to, so the downside to doing a text box is scaling things, because if you just take it and scale, you're scaling the box and not the font. So if we have things that are different sized fonts, it becomes a little cumbersome. The beauty, though, is we can turn that text box off just by double clicking this little handle. And now we can increase the size, filling the space. If we want to go back to a text box, we'll just double click that thing again and it turns it back into a text box, and we can, make some other adjustments. So again, super flexible. We don't have any black on the page, so I do want to change that, and let's make this red. So we're going to make that dark red. Things are fitting pretty well. Okay, so now we're going to go back to our libraries, and we're going to grab this supporting our local artists. We'll click on the page here, see how big it is. And look at that little girl over there trying to support her mom. It's not the original design. The original was like a protest. So I just took the protest sign, the wording off, and then I put the support local artists, which again is a video tutorial that I put into the Google Doc. So you're more than welcome to go in there and watch that video. So let's go ahead and we'll embed this. We'll go to properties, we'll embed the file. We want to flatten to a single image. And then let's move this down. I'm holding Shift and Alt to be able to just constrain the properties so it doesn't distort. And again, I love having dimension, so I'm going to move it up into the space, and then I'll scale her down just a little bit. But I want her to be over the word sale without having to, make it to where we can't read it. I'm actually going to move this up just a little bit too. This is Solano College, of course, and so we want to plug that it's coming from Solano College. So I have that as its own little asset that we can use, and I'm going to plug it right here. So it looks like it's sponsored by Solano College, and we can resize that. It doesn't have to be big. That's just information that's nice to have. And then lastly, before we finish up this post, we are going to add a little call to action right here. And that one, we are just going to say support student artists. Simple. It's not like sale, Sunday. It's something that's subtle, but it still it hits the point. So grab your type tool one more time. We're going to keep it the Adorns serif font, and we're going to say support. We'll do it 3 lines. Student artists. So you know what? We'll do this 2 lines. We'll put it up here, right in that empty space. We'll scale it up just a bit. I go into the properties, and in there we have our font, and then we have paragraph settings. So I'll align to center. And then we're going to make this the yellow. So again, properties, yellow color we made. Looky, looky, we just did it. So now we're taking these backgrounds and we're trying to repeat that so there's some level of cohesion between all of them. We have everything locked, all the backgrounds are locked. So I'm just going to grab all of that information, hold Alt, click drag. If I hold Shift while doing that, it stays in a straight line. So then I know that the spacing is very similar. But you can see now this does not work. We got things completely different. There's a lot of open space here. So now we need to make some adjustments. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take this image, move it down into the space. I'm going to take all of this information and I'm going to move it down just so we can grab the art sale and we'll make that bigger. We'll take supporting student artist and move it down just a little bit. And then we can take this information, we can make that bigger so it's filling up more space, it's more visible. I want it to breathe. I don't want to put it all the way to the edge, so I'm just taking it right there with a little bit of breathing room. And then we'll take this and we can make it bigger. And you can see that, I like to have dimensions, so things laying over the top of other things. And by putting the mom kind of over this little banner of information, it helps define that, give it some more depth. And then lastly, so those are easy changes. Of course, we can move things around. We can make things bigger. So if I really wanted to, I could make that a similar size. I can turn that there. So we can make some minor tweaks, but when you look at it side by side, it looks like it's the same information coming from the same place. And then lastly, our 4x6. Grab all that one more time. Click, drag, I'm holding Shift. Now we have some differences in width. So we'll take everything. Again, we're plugging it to the bleed. See, I didn't hit that bleed. We can make some adjustments here. Let's just right click, unlock background, go to crop image. That's set up to the bleed, so that looks good. Okay. Okay, then we're gonna move that up in the space a little bit. And move it a little bit bigger. I think that looks great. Okay, now we're ready to save. So right now these are set up as templates. We just grabbed it. It's an AI file. It's not saved to the web at all. And so we need to save this in a spot where we can always get back to it, share it, make adjustments, or what have you. So let's go to File, Save As. We're going to turn it to a cloud document. And we're also going to create a folder. So let's turn the folder on. This is going to be Sono College Art Show. Let's save. Right now we have it SCC Art Show templates, and so let's just turn that templates off, and we'll say marketing materials. Save. Now it's in there. It's an AIC, Adobe Illustrator cloud file. to export these, we want to export these individually so we can use them individually. And so we also have web. We're saving for the web and we're saving for print. So we've got some work to do. So first up, we want to go to File, Export. We're exporting these, export as, we're exporting the web files. So we're going to export those as PNGs. We're going to use artboards and we're say, I only want the first one and the second one, so 1 and 2. Export. When it does that, it does it individually. When we're saving it, resolution, screen 72 is for web. It makes them load really quickly. It does make it a little less crisp. So it's really up to you and what application you're looking to save it as. But we'll say medium. We'll keep the background as transparent, even though we haven't filled. We'll hit OK. So now those two files, looks like it's thinking. Those two files were saved. To the desktop. So we can create a folder that we know that they're going in. We need to now save this last one. So we're in RGB and we need to convert it to CMYK. Some printers are very specific. They need a CMYK file. That's cyan, magenta, yellow, black. And others aren't so specific, but in this case, they want us to output 4-color process, which is CMYK. And so if we go to File, Save As, actually, let's do this here. We already saved it. Save As. When we're doing anything and we're submitting it to a printer, we have to create outlines on our font because we don't know if they have this font or not. So let's just make sure that we do that. So we'll do Control A. That's selecting everything, and then we'll go up to Type and then Create Outlines. And that turns everything into an outline. Now it's not art or not font. It is recognized as just a bunch of shapes. So then let's go ahead and save this. We'll save as. We're saving, again, marking materials, but let's call it outline. OL. And that just is referenced, so whoever's using it knows that the font is outlined there. Again, we're saving it into our folder. Hit save. Now, let's go ahead and we're going to save specifically just this flyer. So in this case, these aren't printed material, so we can delete the artboards. I just have my artboard tool. And then we're unlocking everything, selecting just what we don't want. Hit delete. Now, file, save, file, color mode, CMYK. It'll convert it to CMYK, which you can tell it kind of softened up the colors a little bit. They're not quite so vibrant. And then we can file, save as. We're going to save it to our computer. We'll put it into our folder and we'll save it as a PDF file and then hit save. If you wanted to, in output, to give it some bleed mark, give it some trim marks. We can do that. The printer could always turn those off, but we'll save those. It's saving the PDF. And then if we go into our desktop and go find it, and open it up, you can see that we've got some trim lines, and it's going to set up the trim lines where the bleed is. So you can see if it cuts straight across, that's where we set up the bleed. And that is it.